So, we all know about Sonic versus the Flash. I mean, I even did a video comparing the speed of these two speedsters to figure out who's faster. But every hero has a nemesis, right? An opposite, the other side of the same coin. For the Flash, that answer is pretty obvious. Reverse Flash. Sure, he's got other enemies, even an evil version of himself, but none of them quite compare to Eobard Thawne. And for Sonic, you'd think that Shadow or maybe Eggman would fit that role. But when you look a little deeper, especially through the lens of a Reverse Flash style villain, neither of them really fit the bill. So, who does? Well, I'm glad you asked. So without further ado, here's my pick for Sonic's Reverse Flash style villain. Let's get into it. So to start off, I know what you're probably thinking. Both Eggman and Shadow are amazing picks when it comes to being Sonic's nemesis. Eggman is the villain of at least half the media Sonic is a part of. Meanwhile, Shadow is like the dark, less fortunate version of Sonic. But there are a few things that both these characters lack, in terms of comparing them to the Reverse Flash. I'll do Eggman first. With him, it's kinda just obvious that he's not Sonic. I mean, how fast Eggman really is rather debatable because of clips like these, but design-wise, they're nothing alike. Eggman is human, or human-like, meanwhile Sonic clearly has animalistic features. Eggman is really smart and techy, meanwhile Sonic usually just likes to break all his robots by running into them full force. They're not really a great match for each other. If anything, I'd say Tails would be a better nemesis for Eggman than Sonic is, since Tails is significantly more intelligent. However, the one thing going in Eggman's favor is his consistency. About, I'd say, 90% of the time, Eggman just purely hates Sonic. It's selfish desires that drive him, which is why Eggman doesn't ever question his motives. Unless they affect him, of course. Because just like Eobard, Eggman is willing to team up with Sonic so long as there's something in it for him. Most likely his life. Just like how the Reverse Flash will team up with Flash if some other greater villain is trying to mess with things. Now ironically, Shadow has the opposite problem. In terms of looks and abilities, he parallels Sonic to a T, having black and red instead of white and blue as his coloring, plus the minor adjustments to his quills and accessories. His speed particularly comes from his shoes more instead of just pure running, sort of like how Thawne draws from the negative speed force via his emotions instead of having a connection to the speed force. And also, like the two DC rivals, Sonic and Shadow share roughly the same intellect. Shadow is no tech genius, perhaps more stealthy and tactical, but isn't so out of Sonic's range to even comprehend his way of thinking. Shadow is just a few steps ahead, a lot like the Reverse Flash. However, there's one unfortunate thing that makes Shadow not the completely perfect nemesis for Sonic. They're not enemies anymore. I mean, Shadow's not really a great friend of Sonic's either. Maybe he will be in the next movie, but in terms of games, Shadow is still a loner. I'd say closer even to Rouge and Omega more than anyone else. However, the reason for this is that unlike Eggman, he doesn't have a hatred for Sonic specifically. He had a hate at the world for losing Maria. Sonic was just an obstacle getting in the way of Shadow's revenge. Also, Shadow was probably just annoyed by the Blue Blur's ability to keep up with him. But by no means was that the reason Shadow wanted to hurt Sonic. Therefore, once Shadow realized that he needed to protect Earth for Maria's sake instead of destroying it, he stopped. Stopped his revenge, his fights with Sonic, all of it, pretty much. Eobard has never had a full-on character change like that. He's always just evil, wanting to be the fastest and also wanting to get back to his timeline, depending on what media you're referencing. So what does this all mean? Both Shadow and Eggman are great villains within the Sonicverse. However, they don't match all that well to the standards set by the Reverse Flash. So who else could it be? Funnily enough, I was actually thinking about Mephiles. Now, hear me out. Some of his extra abilities don't make him quite the spitting image of Sonic the way Shadow does. And also, he's only really ever appeared in Sonic 06, so he's not that frequent of a character either. But I will say that pretty much everything else about this guy fits the bill for a Reverse Flash style villain. First off, character design. In either his weak or crystalline form, Mephiles looks like a dark, twisted version of Sonic. This mostly thanks to Shadow, who was pretty much the first person Mephiles saw after being set free. Therefore, he somewhat took on Shadow's design. Only, I'd say that Mephiles' design looks even darker and more extreme than Shadow's does. Which, I mean, that actually reminds me more of Zoom than Reverse Flash. At least the CW version. The horror movie vibe, the pitch black aesthetic, very creepy. However, while Zoom and Reverse Flash share a lot of traits, Zoom didn't inflict the same emotional damage as Eobard, and he doesn't reoccur as often. So while Mephiles' design leads more towards Zoom's nightmare fuel energy, he ultimately aligns more with Reverse Flash in a lot of things, and here's why. Like Eobard, Mephiles takes on the hero's image and twists it into something darker and more unsettling. And just how Eobard morphs into Dr. Wells to fit in, Mephiles molds himself to look like Shadow, another distortion of the hero's reflection. But even more than that are his motives, and his methods that make him so much more like the Reverse Flash. Mephiles doesn't just burst into the scene like Eggman, trying to smash everything with brute force. And, unlike Shadow, he's not driven by some broken heart or tragic past. No, Mephiles wants to rule, to destroy, and most importantly, to exist across all of time. That's it. No grief, no sense of justice, just pure, calculated malevolence. Like Eobard, Mephiles takes his time. He was stuck in a time paradox for 10 years, using that time to plan his rise to ultimate power. And when he's out, he pulls the strings behind the scenes, tries to pull others into his plan, and he toys with people's emotions to get the outcome he's looking for. And remember how Eobard Thawne doesn't just want to beat Barry Allen, he wants to ruin him, destroy his life, make him question himself, and corrupt everything he stands for. That's exactly what Mephiles does to the entirety of the Sonic team in 06. He manipulates the timeline, kills Sonic, which has anyone else even done that, by the way, and nearly breaks the fabric of their universe just to get what he wants. No mercy, no redemption arc, just destruction. And in the end, the best way to get rid of him is for him to never exist at all. Now, this isn't true in every case, I don't think, but let's turn to Season 1 of the CW Flash. How do they defeat Eobard? Eddie, Eobard's great-grandfather, I think, ends his own life. So just like Mephiles had to be completely erased from time, so was Eobard, in a way. Not to mention, Mephiles fuses with Iblis to become Solaris, a being who exists across all of time, which Reverse Flash is said to exist outside of time. It's the reason he comes back so many times after dying. So yeah, another kind of interesting connection there. And then lastly, while it's never shown within 06 or his brief appearance in Shadow Generations, if Mephiles would ever be capable of teaming up with the people he's usually looking to destroy, I think he could. Like I said, Mephiles is out for himself, so if it meant getting what he wanted, he would for sure team up with Sonic and friends if it meant him staying alive. So yeah, Eggman might be Sonic's classic villain, and Shadow is probably his greatest rival. But Mephiles, he's Sonic's Reverse Flash, at least in my opinion. The twisted reflection, the puppet master, the true timeline menace. Anyway, what do you think? Is Mephiles a good Reverse Flash comparison or no? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye!